Hello everyone, Mrs. DeVita here to give you a tutorial on one-point perspective. One-point perspective is used to create realistic three-dimensional shapes. You will need a ruler, so I have a ruler here, but anything that has a straight edge will work. So if you don't have a ruler, you can always use something as simple as a piece of paper that's folded up. You could use a book or anything that's kind of firm and has a straight edge, as long as you don't mind it potentially getting written on. Okay, so now that I've shown you a few options that you can use to draw your straight lines if you don't have a ruler, the first thing that you're going to need to draw is called a horizon line. The horizon line shows where the sky meets the ground. The next step is to draw a vanishing point, and this is as simple as drawing a dot anywhere on the horizon line. I'm going to do mine over here. Now, for the rest of this tutorial, if you find that you really are completely lost and you are confused by it, I would recommend when you try to do yours, try to put your vanishing point right here and try to put your shapes roughly where I put my shapes. It's okay to copy me for this one because it can be really confusing, especially where I'm not there to help you work through your problems. But you have to do at least 6 shapes, one of each type of shape that I do. So I'm going to start with a square. Now, to create your three-dimensional look to the square, we are going to connect all 3 of these points to this point. We will not be connecting this one because it goes through the shape if I were to do that. So any lines that go through shapes, we do not connect those to the vanishing point. Okay, so pretty simple so far. It looks like this square, hopefully to you, you can see that it looks like it's kind of shooting in that direction away from the vanishing point. The next one I'm going to do is a rectangle, which is going to be extremely similar to a square. So now that it is above the horizon line, we're going to have the bottom corners go towards the vanishing point. And so that is actually a really good example of how sometimes your three-sided shapes do not connect to the vanishing point. So just to prove it to you, if I connect this line to this dot, it would go like that. So it would go through. If I had made this a rectangle that was kind of in line with the ground, you wouldn't get that sort of weird thing going on. So there are some examples of a square and a rectangle. Next, I'm going to move on to a triangle. Now I'm going to connect all 3 sides to the vanishing point. So just for sake of example here, I've drawn another triangle that if you drew a triangle like this, it might end up confusing you because not all 3 points can go to the vanishing point. These ones do, but again, this one does not, because if you were to connect that line, it would be drawn through the shape, and we don't want to do that. If you're following along, the 3 shapes that you would be drawing would be this one, and this one. Don't draw this one or this one. Those are the confusing ones. You're totally allowed to draw them, but if it's a little too confusing for you, these are the ones that are a little bit simpler. For the 4th shape, I'm going to show you a pentagon. Okay, so there's my 5-sided shape. Let's take a look at which parts are going to go to the vanishing point. So this line right here, this dot, we will not be drawing a line to the vanishing point because it will go through the shape. This dot, however, we have clearance, we can go right to that vanishing point. And as you can see, I have made a pentagon with all these sides, and yet there's still only 3 lines, just like a square. So this can happen very frequently. It's going to change based on where this is in comparison to your dot. So I'm going to do the hexagon actually very similar to this. Okay, so here's now where I have to make a decision. This shape can be either on top of or behind this triangle. I'm going to choose that it's behind the triangle, so I do not want to draw on top of that triangle. So I'm going to line it up, I'm going to draw my line, and I'm going to stop when I reach the triangle. Here we have square, rectangle, triangle, pentagon, and hexagon. Next, we're going to draw a circle. I happen to have brought a compass home, so I can definitely draw it with the compass, but you can use any circular object that you have in your house. So for example, if you have a mug, you can go ahead and take that mug and use it to draw a circle. Yeah, that's actually a little big, so I'm definitely going to use the compass. So now that I have a circle is where it gets a little bit tricky because a circle obviously does not have corners. So what you're going to do is you just connect your ruler or your straight edge to the dot, and then you move into the shape until you touch it. So right about there is where I'm going to draw my line coming out of the circle. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to move through it until I get to the very outside edge. And then looks like it can go all the way up. Okay, and that is how you draw a circle. So those are the 6 objects that you're going to try to draw when you do your own 1-point perspective. You may have noticed in my time lapse that I have created shapes that are not going all the way back to the vanishing point. So at this point in time, I'm going to show you how to cut those shapes off. What you are going to do is you are going to start on the edge of the shape, and you are going to put your straight edge on that edge like that, and then you're just going to slowly slide it while keeping it in the same exact position. So what that means is I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, I'm making sure that it's staying completely, in this case, completely vertical, and moving it back. And then I'm gonna stop it when it's about how big I want it to be, and I do that, and I draw the cutoff line. Now, you have to make it horizontal, and then you have to slide it up, keeping it horizontal, making sure you don't turn it diagonal or anything like that. Keep it horizontal and move it up until it reaches that corner. So it's here, I'm slowly moving it up. It's at that corner. Now I'm going to draw that line. I'm gonna move it away. Now the rest of these lines, I'm going to erase so that you can see what this looks like without those guiding lines there. And now we have turned this simple square into a prism, which is a 3-dimensional 4-sided object. I'm going to do the same thing with the rectangle up above. Okay, here's where it's tricky. I'm starting on the line, I'm lowering it until it's at that corner. Draw that line across. So sometimes these lines get really close together, but that is still where they're supposed to be. All right, so now I'm gonna move on to the triangle. Again, I'm doing it in the same order, square, rectangle, triangle, because the triangle is a little bit trickier because this line is diagonal. So now the trick is that you have to keep it exactly the same type of diagonal as you go back. So you can't do, like if I do this, that's still diagonal, but it's not parallel to this line. So this line is like this. The line that is behind it, showing where the triangle prism ends, needs to be parallel to that line. And then this one, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to move it back until it meets where this line met. Again, keeping it parallel, and then drawing that line, and you have to stop when you get to the edge of the shape. Next, moving on to the pentagon. Now, pentagon and hexagon are going to be extremely similar, but this top is going to move up, and I'm gonna make this one a little bit longer. So what do you do when you wanna make it look like it's longer? Well, this line should be even farther away. So if let's start over like this. I'm just gonna slowly move the ruler up, 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 up. Again, keeping it parallel with the original. I'm going to line it up with that corner. Then draw that line. It looks like I kind of messed it up. Those don't look parallel. I'm gonna try again. There we go. See, so even I don't get it right on the first try, so make sure you're double checking. All right, so I'm just gonna stop it at the triangle because I wanna keep that looking like it's overlapping. Okay, and now for the circle, this is a little bit, it's like simultaneously easier and harder because you don't have to worry about lining it up, but you do have to keep it curved. So you just have to create a nice curve that looks like, basically if you were to create a circle back here, it would follow that curve. So it would be kind of like if you had a circle there, it's only the part that you would see up at the top of the circle. Okay, and now we have some shapes that are three-dimensional coming from the vanishing point. A couple of them are overlapping each other. Feel free to move these around if you want to do a shape that's above the horizon line. And I'm just going to turn this upside down so you can actually see the effect that the horizon line has. So if you had the horizon line down here and you drew these shapes in these spots, all of these lines would be exactly the same because the dot is still in the same spot, but it makes it look like these shapes are now above you versus coming right at you. So the placement of your horizon line actually really changes the feel that you get when you create your shapes. So your assignment is to create a 1-point perspective drawing using one each of these shapes. You can do it exactly like how I did it, or you can move them around, change them up if you want a little bit more of a challenge. Change where the horizon line is, change where the vanishing point is, and you can create some pretty interesting compositions this way. So the end goal here is that you know what a horizon line is, you know what a vanishing point is, and you know how to connect these 6 different shapes to the vanishing point. So this is just the formative to practice 1-point perspective. You do have the entire week to get this done, so I highly recommend starting it now so that if you have any questions or have difficulty with it, it's easier for you to find the time to ask me those questions and I can answer them and you can retry it. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope that you found it helpful and that you are now able to create your own 1-point perspective shapes.